For 22 years the Gambia was under the rule of one man. His name was Yahya Jammeh. Think of a movie villain, but real. He didn't win a popularity contest to get there. Nope. He seized power in 1994 through a military coup. Just walked in and said, "I'm in charge now." And for 2 long decades he was. His rule wasn't about picnics and national holidays for everyone. It was a dictatorship, plain and simple, casting a long shadow. The people of the Gambia lived under a constant cloud of unease. It was a tough time, a really tough time for many. Jammeh's government wasn't exactly winning awards for human rights. Actually, it was quite the opposite. It was pretty bad. If you dared to speak out, you could find yourself in serious trouble. Freedom of the press? More like freedom to agree with Jammeh. Journalists faced suppression, and critics were silenced effectively. Torture and arbitrary arrests became tools of the state. Imagine waking up every day not knowing if you might say the wrong thing. That was the reality for many Gambians under his regime. It's hard to build a happy society when fear is the main currency. His regime was notorious for its harsh methods. The methods used to maintain control were brutal and systematic. Enforced disappearances were a horrifying tactic. People would just vanish, their families left wondering, fearing the absolute worst. Intimidation was a daily affair, a constant pressure. Jammeh also played dangerous games, inciting divisions among people. He targeted specific ethnic groups like the Mandinka with threats. In 2016 he even threatened to exterminate them. Horrible stuff. He also went after LGBT individuals, making terrible, violent threats. This wasn't just bad leadership, it was actively harmful. It created an environment of deep mistrust and terror across the nation. So picture this, an entire country holding its breath for over 2 decades. The atmosphere was thick with fear. It seeped into everyday life. People whispered their true thoughts, always looking over their shoulders. Public spaces were monitored and dissent was crushed ruthlessly. This control extended to all aspects of Gambian society. It wasn't just about political opponents, ordinary citizens suffered too. The promise of development and freedom remained a distant dream. Jammeh's Gambia was a place where power meant everything, and rights meant little. This was the backdrop against which the events of 2016 would unfold, a nation desperate for a change, for a glimmer of hope. Then came December 2016, election time in the Gambia. Now elections under a dictator can be a bit predictable, usually. But this time something unexpected was brewing in the air. The opposition parties, often suppressed, managed to form a coalition. They rallied behind one candidate, Adama Barrow, a new face. He wasn't a seasoned politician, which maybe was his strength. People were tired of the same old story of fear and repression. They saw in Barrow a chance, however slim, for something different. Could this be the moment? Could the tide finally turn? The anticipation was high, mixed with a healthy dose of skepticism. The election happened, and then, the results started coming in. Adama Barrow, the challenger, had won. Yes, you heard that right. He had defeated Yahya Jammeh, the man who ruled for 22 years. Initially, Jammeh did something truly astonishing. He accepted defeat. On December 1st, 2016, he went on television. He congratulated Barrow. He said it was the will of the people. The Gambia erupted in celebration. Disbelief turned into pure joy. It felt like a miracle. Freedom seemed at last within reach. People danced in the streets, a sight unseen for years. It was a beautiful, hopeful moment for the small West African nation. But hold on, this roller coaster had another twist coming. Just 1 week later, Jammeh was back on TV. Different tune this time. He announced he was rejecting the election results. Poof! Hope interrupted. He suddenly found unacceptable errors and irregularities. Funny how those only appear when you lose, right? So he annulled the results and called for a new election. The celebrations stopped. The joy turned into confusion, then anger. The Gambia was plunged right back into uncertainty, a major political crisis. Jammeh's party, of course, filed petitions to challenge the outcome. It was a classic case of if you can't win, change the rules. Now let's be clear. The run-up to this election wasn't exactly fair. The government, Jammeh's government, had all the advantages. They dominated state media, blasting their own propaganda constantly. State resources were shamelessly used for the ruling party's campaign. Opposition parties, especially the United Democratic Party, faced severe crackdowns. Earlier in 2016, a prominent UDP activist, Solo Sandeng, was arrested. He was beaten to death by police, a stark warning to others. Over 90 opposition activists were arrested, many tortured. Jammeh even declared that any opposition protests would be met with extreme force. So, Barrow's win was even more remarkable against this backdrop. So, Jammeh refused to leave. What a surprise. Not really. His party tried to get the Supreme Court to overturn the election, but there was a problem. The Supreme Court needed judges. Judges from Nigeria and Sierra Leone were supposed to hear the case, but they hadn't arrived. The court couldn't even meet until May 2017. Talk about a convenient delay for someone clinging to power. Jammeh, meanwhile, wasn't just sitting quietly. He warned that any protests by the opposition would be crushed. He was digging in, ready to fight to stay in his big chair. The atmosphere grew tense, very, very tense indeed for everyone. This whole situation didn't go unnoticed by the Gambia's neighbors. The Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, got very concerned. Countries like Senegal, Nigeria, and Ghana were watching closely. They couldn't just stand by and watch democracy get trampled. ECOWAS made its position clear. Jammeh had to step down. They demanded he respect the will of the Gambian people. And they weren't just asking nicely with a fruit basket. They started preparing for a possible military intervention. This was serious. Regional powers were ready to act decisively. The message was, "Your time is up, Mr. Jammeh." While ECOWAS was talking tough, Adama Barrow, the rightful winner, took action. For his own safety, he was sworn in as president on January 19, 2017. But not in the Gambia. He took the oath in Dakar, Senegal. Imagine that, becoming president of your country while in another country. The UN Security Council unanimously backed ECOWAS's efforts. They wanted a political solution first, but the pressure was on. Jammeh, feeling the heat, declared a state of emergency on January 17th. He banned acts of disobedience. Basically, don't disagree with me. This was his last-ditch effort to maintain his crumbling control. The standoff was reaching its peak, and something had to give. The crisis was having a huge impact on ordinary Gambians. Tens of thousands of people, around 45,000, fled the country. They went to neighboring Senegal or to rural areas seeking safety. The capital, Banjul, was filled with anxiety. People stocked up on food and water. Nobody knew what would happen next. Would there be violence? Jammeh's support base was also starting to crack under the pressure. Even the Gambian army chief, a Jammeh loyalist, seemed hesitant. He said he wouldn't risk his men's lives in a political fight. Smart man. Several ministers resigned, including the long-serving vice president. Even the lawyer for Jammeh's party fled and urged him to step aside. With tension sky-high, ECOWAS didn't just rely on threats. They also pushed hard on the diplomatic front. They had to. As early as December 13, 2016, an ECOWAS delegation visited the Gambia. They formed a mediation team trying to talk sense into Jammeh. It was a delicate dance, apply pressure, but keep the door open for talks. As ECOWAS forces were literally preparing to enter the Gambia, a final effort was made. The presidents of Guinea and Mauritania flew into Banjul. These were last-ditch negotiations, the very last chance for a peaceful way out. The world watched, hoping to avoid bloodshed in the small nation. Every minute counted, with soldiers ready at the borders. The military threat was very real. This wasn't a bluff. Troops from Senegal, Nigeria, and Ghana were massed at the Gambian border. Senegal was set to lead the military intervention. Nigeria sent aircraft, troops, and even a warship. They meant business. Adama Barrow, the president-elect, urged Gambian soldiers to stay in their barracks. He warned that any soldiers who resisted would be considered rebels. He also tried to offer Jammeh a way out, a softer landing. He suggested Jammeh could have the status and privileges of a former head of state if he left peacefully. It was a combination of a stick and a very small carrot. The pressure was immense, coming from all sides. And then, finally, the breakthrough. Just as ECOWAS forces entered Gambia. On January 21, 2017, Yahya Jammeh agreed to step down, peacefully. After 22 years of rule and weeks of dangerous brinkmanship, it was over. He left the country. He went into exile in Equatorial Guinea. The military intervention was halted. The soldiers stood down. A collective sigh of relief was heard across West Africa, and indeed the world. No war occurred, though it came incredibly close. Too close. The Gambia had stared into the abyss and pulled back. It was a testament to the power of regional cooperation and firm resolve. The stubborn dictator finally packed his bags. This peaceful resolution was a massive victory for democracy, not just for the Gambia, but for all of West Africa. It showed that regional bodies like ECOWAS could effectively uphold democratic principles. The UN Office for West Africa and the Sahel also played a key role. Their consistent diplomatic and military pressure was crucial in preventing atrocities. Adama Barrow returned to the Gambia to begin his presidency. The state of emergency was lifted. Hundreds of political prisoners were released. There was hope, a real sense of a new beginning. Of course, challenges remained, like addressing past abuses and national reconciliation. But for that moment, the Gambia breathed free, a beacon of hope.